Our speaker today is Adam Lewinberg. He is the president and CEO of Postal Advocate, the only mail audit and recovery firm in the U.S. and Canada. We manage a portfolio of 182,000 pieces of mailing equipment for over 77,000 online postage users for the largest U.S. companies. He speaks and teaches nationally on mail savings and industry trends. He is a former industry co-chair of the Boston Postal Customer Council and Mail Systems Management Association. He is CMDSS and MDC certified. He is a featured writer for Mailing Systems Technology magazine. Adam worked for one of the largest mailing vendors for over 17 years. He was the director of national sales for Presort tabletop inserters, addressing hardware, software, and green offerings. And he was one of the top 5 account managers nationally, working with some of the largest accounts in the nation. Over to you, Adam.
Thanks, Michaela. So we're going to talk about the June 30th USPS forced meter migration. So we're going to give you everything that you need to know on this. What we're going to cover is the details of the change, what devices are impacted, how do you create visibility to the equipment that needs to be migrated. This might be not a big deal if you have one location. If you have lots of locations, it can be more problematic. What are your mail equipment options that are available? What are right sizing strategies that can save up to 80%? We're going to talk about enterprise online postage solutions, where these systems make sense. How do you plan and implement the changes? What happens after the deadline? And then ongoing visibility and control. There are going to be future migration phases that we're going to be having. So I just want to talk, before we even get into the details of this, this is not the first time we've had a meter migration. We've had multiple meter migrations over my 30 years in this industry. What's interesting about this one is it's the biggest. This is the largest time where such a large percentage of the entire United States meter population is having to be changed at one point in time. So USPS meters are decertified by June 30th, 2024. New devices must be this new standard, which is called an Intelligent Mail Indicia, IMI, versus the old style, which were IBI, information-based indicia. So what you need to know is that current devices will need to be replaced. They can't be retrofitted. You can't just get a chip for your machine. You have to get a physical new machine. USPS is doing this because they want a higher level of visibility inside their data. Today, in the current systems, these IBI machines, you hit refill, the meter, connects to the data center, loads your $1,000 of postage, and then disconnects. The post office is saying that's not sufficient for us to run our operations in the future. We need meters to be constantly connected so we can monitor them from different things. The USPS is doing this so they can provide a higher level of security and visibility to their mail pieces. Meters, and this is going to be the hardship, meters are going to have to be constantly connected versus only at the time of refill. And when we started this, there were 60 to 70% of the meters in the United States that didn't meet this standard. We estimate it's probably in the 20 to 40% since we're getting so close to the deadline, but there are still a lot of devices that need to be updated. The value to the post office from their perspective is they can better automate their operations, they can provide higher security, they can validate that you have the correct postage amounts, they can issue refunds electronically through the devices without having to fill out those forms and bring to the post office, and they can have more control over what mail's entering their network. So these are the devices that we know about from the vendors. Pitney Bowes and Quadient have listed devices that have to be, replaced. FP, we don't have a full list. If you have FP equipment, you should definitely reach out to the vendors. What's interesting to note about this first round, this June 30th, is that it's mostly the lower to mid-end machines. The higher end machines basically have an extension until, the end of 26 or 27. But really what's being impacted is the smaller mid-sized machines, which is why such a large percentage of the number of units needs to be changed after the deadline. So let's talk about what's happening for real. So June 30th is coming up in 3 weeks. Many organizations are not going to be compliant with this cutoff. The post office is given an exception period that says people can use their machines out of compliance through the end of the calendar year, so through December 31st. But each vendor is handling this differently. So you should reach out to your vendors to figure out what their process is. And we're not here to tell you what one vendor is doing versus another. But what we're hearing from our clients is some vendors are making you do mandatory monthly connections to the meter vendors system. They're having last refill dates which is saying that, after a certain point in time, you can't refill your meter anymore. And that's not December 31st, it's multiple months before. And then some vendors are having earlier cutoff dates where they're saying those units have to be back in stock by earlier timeframes. So don't just assume December 31st is the time that you have to react to this. Client challenges that we're seeing with migration, the biggest is network connectivity. A lot of organizations, especially in healthcare, financial services, don't want meters connected to their networks. So your choices are either you plug your meter into the network for that, or the meter vendors offer mobile connectors, basically like a mobile phone connection, which bypasses the meters needing to go onto your network. The downside of those connectors is they're expensive. You have to pay a rental fee for those on a monthly basis. The other challenge is the cost. If you have unit level X, the replacement unit for unit level X is more expensive than the unit in which you have today. So if you're right sizing, we can bring costs down, which we'll talk about on this. But if you're doing like for like, you're going to spend more money replacing equipment. Creating visibility of the equipment that needs to be replaced. There may be machines that you have scattered throughout different offices throughout the country, and that creates challenges to figure out which locations have units that need to be switched. Collecting the requirements for the new equipment, what does everyone need? Bidding the cost between vendors and models, implementing the new units, returning old equipment, and be very careful on this one, refunding postage from the old units. You want to make sure that you issue a request to the vendors for like basically a postage refund request form that the vendors have to make sure you get all your money back. We have a database of over 55,000 transactions where people have not gone and gotten their money back from the meter vendors, and the funds get turned over to the states or to the USPS unclaimed funds databases. And so, mainly because people forget that a meter is a bank and it holds money. So not much time to go, and we estimate there's at least a few 100,000 devices still left out there. So creating visibility. So we manage the largest portfolio of mail equipment in the world. This is what we would do in any account to create visibility. You can do the same things yourself of what I'm talking about. If you need support for any company that has over 30 locations, we'll do a no-cost assessment for you where we will build an inventory for you that will give you the details of all your equipment. But for you, you can do the same steps I'm about to describe, and this is what we found works tried and true. So first off, you need to obtain the account numbers for your equipment and your leases. So wherever you have equipment, get those account numbers. Equipment models to see if it matches the list that we gave. And the serial numbers, because in order to get access to the online systems on the meter vendors, you need an account number and a serial number. And the web portals of these meter vendors are very important. You want to be able to get the contract expiration dates because you may be on leases on some of this equipment that may not expire until some time in the future. So once you create a login on the vendor's website, some of the vendors publish the contract expiration dates, others make you call their customer service line. But once you have access on the meter vendor's websites, you can get the mail volumes. This is one of the most important things. You want to see how much postage does each office do so you can figure out how to properly right size. And then what features are needed for feeding, weighing, accounting, etc. There are multiple different options, which we'll talk about. So the methodology that we do for our clients, you can do the same thing, is see if you have any reports or agreements provided by your mailing vendors. And if not, go to accounts payable and do a search for the main mailing vendor names. Whitney Bowes, Quadient, Frankenstein Postalia, Stamps.com. These are the main mailing vendors in the space. Get invoice copies from those invoices, from those lines you found in the accounts payable spend. And then from that, you should have account numbers and serial numbers and create an account on the meter vendor's website and link all your locations to those logins. And then search the online accounts for the postage usage, the contract expiration dates, and any equipment details. And then call the meter vendors for any other items required. This is how you get visibility. We take this data and we put it into an enterprise web platform so we can manage the inventories of our clients and give them visibility to this type of information. But you can do it yourself. You're just going to have to manage it on spreadsheets. Now, it's important to understand what mail machines do, like what postage meters do. Let's just start on the standalone postage meter. A standalone postage meter is you put something in, it stamps it, and it shoots it out the other side, or you pull it out directly back. You feed them one at a time, and those cost $25 to $100 a month. Then you have automatic feed mid-volume machines, which you can take a pile of envelopes and you shoot them through the machine, and it seals and stamps them. And then you have automatic feed machines with an internal weighing system. And those internal weighing systems, you take the whole pile of mail, and regardless of the weight, it sends it through, it weighs it, seals it, and stamps it on the machine. And they have those machines in mid-volume and high volume. The reason I'm talking about these differences is low volume machines start as low as about $25 a month, and high volume machines go as high as about $1,300 a month. So that's a wide gap per month to be spending. It's important to know the volumes of mail and what features you need so you can tailor this to what you need. There's also online postage options we're going to talk about, where you can basically print postage from your computer, bypassing the need for smaller mail machines, smaller standalone meters. And that is a very popular option. There are actually more there are more locations in the United States using online postage systems than there are using postage machines. Right sizing. These are the things to think about with right sizing. And I'm going to start from the top. If you have an internal weighing system and an automatic feed system on your mail machines today, do the costs justify with your mail volumes? An internal weighing system, something that weighs the mail as it goes through, costs $200 to $300 a month extra on top of the cost. The automatic feeding system costs $100 to $200 per month. Can you live with lower capacity scales because heavier items are typically going UPS or FedEx, or there may be other scales to use on site? So a standard scale for a mail machine is 5 or 10 pounds. Higher capacity scales, 15, 30, 70, 149 pounds, can cost $30 to $100 a month. So let's say it costs $50 a month on a 5-year lease. That's $3,000. You can go to your office supply store and you can buy a 150-pound scale for $113. That looks like the image that I showed. There are plenty of low-cost options, and you may have other scales in your office that you use for FedEx that go to higher capacities that negate the reason to spend the extra money on higher capacity scales in your unit. All the features on your current system being used: mail accounting systems, custom weighers, conveyors, stackers, special services. Can online postage be an option for lower volume meters? These online postage platforms save at least 20% in postage for parcels and priority mail. They could be expanded to UPS and FedEx, and we typically recommend them for places doing less than about 20 letters a day. In the postage machine world, probably 85% of the postage machines out in existence today do less than 20 letters a day. So online postage can be a great alternative. And if you have more than 10 locations or work from home staff, enterprise online postage platforms can be a big help, and we'll talk about those. So what online postage is printing postage directly from your computer. There are 2 vendors today that can do true online postage, where they can print postage stamps, and that's Pitney Bowes and Stamps.com. And the way they work is you get these sheets of stamps, like the ones you see here, and each sheet of stamp has a serial number. You enter that serial number into the online platform, and then you say, I want to print 5 1-ounce stamps and 2 3-ounce stamps, and it basically builds your sheet for you. You put the sheet into your printer and you print your stamps. You can also print directly onto the envelope, and you could print the postage, you could print the address and the return address, typically all in one pass, or you could have direct thermal label printers. The majority of people who use online postage just use the sheets because people can't figure out how to feed an envelope through their printer, and because nobody wants to have a dedicated label printer or laser printer that's connected to a computer when you could use this from any device. If you're doing shipping labels, 4x6 shipping labels can be generated and printed that have not only the postage or a barcode, they would have the address of where you're sending it, the return address, and then a tracking scanning barcode. You could print on white paper. You could use shipping labels you get for, Staples or Office Max or one of those places. So it's inexpensive compared to postage meters. A typical online postage license costs $10 to $30 a month. It's cloud-based, can be accessed from any device, easy to deploy. 7 to 10 days, you're up and running. But you have visibility to every history and package tracking status. So think about a postage meter. Most of the time, all you know with a postage meter is that you filled it for $1,000. Online postage, you know every single piece of mail that ran, who ran it, what class of mail. So it reduces theft and provides more control and visibility. Some systems have UPS and FedEx add-ons where you can basically compare rates between the carriers, and there's a significant postage saving. So I want to show you this chart. If you use a meter or online postage, you save 4 cents, because if you go to the post office to buy a stamp, it's 68 cents. Use a postage meter or online postage, you get the 64-cent rate. If you're doing certified mail, the online versions can have electronic return receipt. Meters can have that as well, but they charge for extra subscriptions typically. But that's typically included in online postage systems. But most importantly, when you're sending Ground Advantage, Priority Mail, or Priority Mail Express, they have 20 to 70% cost reductions over sending things out through your postage meter. Postage meters have retail rates, just like if you went to the post office for parcels. These systems have commercial rates and then a negotiated service agreement typically embedded in them that gives lower rate structures. So this is a weird concept I'm about to talk about, but in many organizations, it's easier to send a $15 overnight item than a 64-cent letter. It doesn't make any sense when I first say it, but if you think about it, most organizations use UPS or FedEx, and they have one platform that everybody uses for their shipments. Everybody goes to FedEx.com, FedEx Ship Manager, or UPS has a campus ship system, and then every location processes in the exact same way. Everyone goes online, they go into a platform, they process their shipments, and then corporate gets a bill either every week or every month that links back to their cost center, and they can charge back the offices, and it's a universal visibility to every single piece of mail, of a shipment that they've done or mail. And it's basically supports people who work from home in small offices, and it's a universal platform that works at every location. Now think about mail. Do you have postage meters in your office? Do you have any online postage in some other offices? Do you send post users to the post office to buy stamps, in which case they're paying 5 to 70% premiums over what you'd get through an online platform? You have to send someone to the post office, and they don't have the right denominations of postage because they're typically buying rolls of stamps. Or do you courier mail to a hub location? And this is typical in hospitals or banks where they're moving mail between different offices to get it back to a hub location, all because they don't have postage meters at all the offices because they don't want to spend that money at every location. There's typically no defined process how postage gets generated. Location determine how mail gets processed based on if they have any technology to do it. And there's almost no visibility across the enterprise of how the mail gets processed and who spends what and to charge it back outside of like a big production hub. The whole reason for this is because people don't want to spend the money at every single office to have either a postage meter or an online postage solution. So we go through this chaos versus FedEx, which just provides free systems and everybody has access. The reason I'm going down this road is because the future of the mailing industry is not having postage meters in every office. The future of the mailing industry, and we're already implementing these for clients, is having enterprise online postage systems, which work just like the single online postage that we talked about, but it allows one platform, just like FedEx.com, everybody to be onboarded, all users for all locations to be accessed. And the big difference about what's available in these platforms today is instead of having to pay a subscription at every single location, there are now subscription options where you can pay one license fee and it works for all users and all locations throughout the entire country. And so we can create the FedEx.com experience for postage. So everyone has access to postage services. So people can make the decision to send something for 64 cents versus the $15 FedEx. These systems also report on all locations. They manage the billing and subscriptions. They control user access from a central place. They can have single sign-on, and single sign-on is really important because it basically what that does is it allows users to be able to just be in the platform. They click on the link to the platform they're in. They don't need a username and password. And the moment they're no longer employed, they're booted out. The free systems from UPS and FedEx do not have that option. So it's a really nice added value. And these platforms can be expanded to UPS and FedEx in real time. They have certified mail capabilities where they save $1.33 for a certified with electronic return receipt. They can have firm mail books that give a manifest that you can bring to the post office of all the certifieds, and all signatures are downloaded into the system weekly so that you have visibility to all the signatures. So if you have more than 10 locations, I strongly recommend looking at these types of platforms. The key to it, where we come in for our clients, is we manage these platforms for our clients. We're the central administrators. For these systems to work, you need someone to administer it, whether it's your own staff or whether it's a company like ours. You need one throat to choke for it. You need someone to define the requirements, implement the system, train the users, onboard them, manage their user access. Even with single sign-on, there are going to be things where people have to be linked to locations or profiles. Monitor the usage, reporting and chargeback on the key metrics. You're going to need to be chargeback of the postage and make sure it's charged back to each individual cost center or location. Quantify the savings and then expand and promote use. The biggest thing that people need is case management support. So when users are on the system, if they have trouble, you need someone internally that they can reach out to for support. We have a case management platform. They hit our link. A menu comes up that's tailored to the client, says what things are, that they might need help with. They type in who they are, and then we have dedicated agents responding to those users and then documenting all the issues. So if we're getting the same issue over and over again, we can try to put in an FAQ guide or something to make it simple. The key point, though, is these systems are the future of mail. It's not going to make sense for people to be doing this crazy process that we've been doing in the past with mail, when there's enterprise tools that work just like UPS or FedEx, but can do more. The other thing is, these systems, because they can be expanded, the rate shopping capabilities about being able to compare rates between UPS, FedEx, and the Postal Service on a transaction by transaction basis drive down costs significantly. So on this migration, planning and implementing. So these are the steps you need to do. Create your inventory report, make sure it has the contract end dates and the spends for all the equipment. Document the postage spends by location. You need to make sure you've got the postage spends. If you don't have those, you're most likely upgrading to machines that are bigger than you need. Understand what features your locations need. Compare the pricing and features with multiple vendors. Order the new solutions, validate the new solutions are installed, remove the current equipment, validate that the postage gets recovered, and make sure all locations across the enterprise are covered. So it's nice to say that this is a one-time action and that you only have to do this once. Our opinion is that this should be an ongoing activity, that there should be a process for maintaining the visibility and control of this mailing spend. And these are the reasons why we think it makes sense. Ongoing right sizing. No matter what, you're going to have in your portfolio, if you have 50 locations that have mail equipment, some of them are going to be impacted by this migration. Some of them aren't. But those that aren't are most likely on leases that expire at different times in the future. The last thing you want is the meter vendors calling directly, trying to upsell those locations as they're coming up. You want a process to be able to control this. We average 74% savings by doing the right sizing that I described to you. You can do it on your own, but you need a way to be able to manage those renewals at the time that they come up. Invoice validation. The mailing vendors are not perfect billers. We've found $23 million we've recovered from our clients in overcharges and dormant funds because people didn't get their postage back. It's important to be able to have a process to be able to look at these things, looking at the invoices, looking at the postage balances to make sure they're being managed. Postage management's a big deal, and these are the things to be able to look at. You want to look for overfunding in the meters. Oftentimes there are meters that are sitting on sometimes tens of thousands of dollars because people just keep auto-filling them without looking at their balances. Pre-funding accounts. People send money into postage accounts thinking that they need 10 or 20,000 or $50,000 in their accounts, but their usage has gone way down and that money's just been sitting there, and it might be sitting there for years. Advance accounts. The vendors will advance you funds for postage. There could be credits sitting on those, like you've overpaid at some point where you're entitled to credits back. Also, if you don't pay the bill on time and in full, you get 18 to 22% interest charges plus late fees. It's treated like a credit card. And a lot of times people just don't pay these bills in full, and these finance charges and fees just keep going. And then you want to look at the state's unclaimed funds office. Pitney Bowes will turn the funds over to the states. Quadient doesn't. Quadient and FP do not. You have to get that money directly from the Postal Service. So it's important to be able to manage those, because there's money out there. Location support to make sure your offices have the best mailing options and support available. And there are going to be 2 more migrations. There's a 2026 and a 2027 migration to make sure. And then also, postage rates have gone up. I'm not even kidding, 23 to 56% in the last 29 months. And they're going to go up again in July, another 8 to 10%. If you don't have visibility to your mailing spends, you're overspending on postage. So a little bit about us. We manage the largest mailing fleet in the world, 182,000 pieces of equipment, 77,000 online postage users. We have systems and tools to make this simple. Our average client saves 74% on the equipment side of it, and about an average of about 1.8 million. Our team came from the mailing industry, a good chunk of us at least, where we have 224 years of mailing experience, and we provide online tools to make managing this spend easy, along with the support staff that is working with you and your locations to make sure this category is effectively managed. Our clients are all industries, doesn't make any difference. I would say our 2 biggest groups are the financial services and healthcare, but it doesn't make any difference. Usually our clients are mid to larger size organizations that have dispersed mailing spends, whether it's from locations having equipment or whether they have outsourced mailing spends through third parties, or they have permits that are out there that no one is effectively managing centrally. For any client, we'll do an audit at no cost and at no obligation. We'll conduct the audit. We'll show you what savings are available. If you decide to move forward, we'll go implement those savings. We'll provide all savings for you for approval. We don't do anything without your approval. We'll manage the entire fleet of spends and postage accounts in our enterprise platform, and then we provide ongoing support. If you're interested in the no-cost analysis, these are the items that we need, and these are the steps that we take. We get a letter of authority from you giving us the approval to research your mailing spends. That's all we can do. If you have any mail equipment reports, current or historical, we'll take them. We ask for an accounts payable export from the main mailing vendors. These are the names on the mail equipment side that make up the majority of the mail spend. This probably makes up 95% of the equipment and postage spends from these vendor names. We'll then come back with a request for some PDF copies from that accounts payable report. We'll create a login on the vendor's websites to link those and make sure that we have visibility to everything to see if there's postage balances and postage usage and contract expiration dates and models and serial numbers, and we'll build you a full inventory. And if you want us to look at UPS or FedEx, we're happy to pull that in and do a proper rate shopping equation, and then meet with us to review the results. And what you can expect from this analysis, and this is all at no cost or obligation, is a full equipment inventory. We'll build you an inventory you can use with or without us. We'll give you the contract details of when all of your leases expire, the postage spends per office, what equipment needs to be migrated, and then we'll create an optimized mail plan that maximizes the savings that you can review. I want to thank everybody for coming today. I want to open this up to any questions. Everything we talked about, just so everyone knows, you can do yourself. You'll get a copy of this presentation deck. You can do yourself from the way that we described it. We could certainly make it easier for you, but I don't want you to feel like this is something you can't do yourself. We just think we do it better than anybody else. We run these types of educational webinars about postage increases. There's one that will be running next month on the postage rate increase that's happening in July, if you'd like to attend. And we run these types of webinars throughout the year, on different educational topics to make it easier for people to figure out what they need to do in this category. So thank you for coming. I'm going to open it up to any questions.
Thanks, Adam. Everybody, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I wanted to remind you there are 2 different ways you can ask questions. You could raise your hand icon and we'll unmute you to ask your question, or you can type your question in the chat box. While I wait for some questions to roll in, I'll go ahead and point to our different social links there. As Adam said, we do have webinars every couple of months on different topics, but if you want to hear from us on a more frequent basis, different tips and tricks, our social media platforms are definitely a good place to go for that information. All right, so it looks like a few questions have rolled in, so we'll get started. So do you think the post office will push back the deadline?
I think the post office is going to hold firm on this one. We're so close to the deadline that I think that, the post office would have made that extension by now with such a short period left. And so I don't expect it. I think giving people that extra 6 months till the end of the year to work out of compliance is enough of an extension for the post office.
All right, and our next question is, what happens if we do nothing?
If you do nothing, most likely your meter is just not going to work anymore. It won't be able to be refilled. Um, so basically, once a meter can't be refilled, you have 90 days between the last refill. If you can't connect to the meter vendor's data center, you have 90 days between connections, and then the meter just says inspection due, and it won't work. So that's the first thing. The meter vendors aren't going to be updating any of the rate structures. Rates change in January every year. So you won't be getting the updated rate structures. And so at a minimum that, you won't be able to refill it, you won't be able to get rates, and the meter vendors are probably going to do other things where they're going to force, sending boxes and, automatically issue returns on some of these things because they can't, um, they want these things out of circulation.
Okay. So that looks like all the questions. So if there are no further questions, I would like to thank everybody for joining us today. Please fill out the survey that will appear at the conclusion of the webinar. And we hope you have a great rest of your day.